emphasize that there is need for ethics amongst journalists so that we respect you. If you do, I don't object to you reporting truthfully about ZANU-PF, about what anyone in ZANU-PF has done, but what I object to strongly is when you create fake news about what I've said and also about ZANU-PF and the activities of its membership. Fake news are unethical, and I say this because last week, you recall, I made reference to the MDC Alliance being in league, that is the MDC, from its foundation, being in league with the colonial master, the United Kingdom, Britain. And I said, and I want to repeat, that declassified documents of the British government now show who made what. Now, how anyone could have twisted to say I'm referring to cabinet minutes of ministers under President Mugabe, that is malicious, very malicious, and it's not ethical. What I said, and I want to repeat, the MDC was founded and funded by the British Westminster Foundation, which represents all political parties which sit in the House of Commons. And it has been nurtured and supported financially, morally, and diplomatically ever since. Now, declassified documents now give us proof of meetings that were held, and I've brought, for just your information, just one document. I will have it circulated. This refers to a meeting at that time, going back 2001, between the High Commissioner was here, who met the MDC, Messrs. Morgan Shangirai, Tendai Laxton BT, and David Coulthard, who were asking for funding. And this minute, which now has been declassified, shows that the British government committed itself to making more resources available to MDC in order to fight ZANU-PF and President Mugabe with a view to reversing the land reform program. That's what I said. And I expected that if you needed any clarification, you would have sought that clarification. But I never said what you've been printing. And that speaks very badly of journalists. Another correction was that I spoke about unplanned settlements and the need for government to take over all land and replan it, reorganize it. I never spoke about demolition of houses, which was done 20 years ago. I never. I said, with respect to unplanned settlements, that is Caledonia, Harare South, and I think I mentioned quite a number of them. Chitungwiza, government should take over the land. Any genuine, should we say, legitimate cooperatives which have no capacity, that land should be taken over by government. Any land barons should be arrested, I made reference to that, without regard to their political affiliation. And I specifically said, anyone who hides behind the name of the party, the law enforcement agents should ignore and go ahead to enforce the law. The law should be enforced against anybody without regard to political affiliation. That's what I said. I never made reference to paying compensation to those whose houses were demolished 20 years ago and so forth. So I thought I should begin with that correction. I want to welcome my colleague, Comrade Mahia, who is here. I've asked him to join me and I'll give him an opportunity at the end of the press brief to say something about the activities that his department is undertaking to set up the League of the Veterans of the Liberation Struggle, whom, as we have reported at this brief before, are made up of war veterans, those who participated in combat and were trained and were involved in the armed struggle. And it also includes war collaborators who have yet to be vetted. It also includes ex-political detainees and restrictees. It also includes non-combatant cadres, that is, those young men and women who went to join the liberation struggle, but through lack of capacity by the liberation movements to train them, were not able to be trained. Those are going to be included in the League of the Veterans of the Armed Struggle. Comrade Mahia will brief you about the progress they are making to set up that league as a wing of the party. The first press conference, the first issue I wanted to address, is to do with a long policy that ZANU-PF is long had but not being implemented. And we are asking that this policy should be implemented. Past ZANU-PF resolutions have required that commercial and residential premises within demarcated rural service centers and growth points be title surveyed and granted freehold title in order to give value to the properties concerned, and to encourage the owners to develop the properties and bring development to rural areas so as to stem the tide of rural to urban migration of the population. It is in this light that ZANU-PF is calling upon the ministries of local government and public works and national housing and social amenities and government and all rural district councils to immediately embark upon a program that provides the following. The area set aside for rural service centers or growth points should be demarcated and excised, that is, removed from the communal land. So that is standalone. It will be like an island in a communal area. B, the Department of Physical Planning, which is in the Ministry of Local Government, should produce, in respect of the land that's set aside and demarcated, a physical plan providing for commercial and residential areas. C, the land should be subdivided into stands for residential, commercial, and where possible, for industrial purposes. Granting of freehold title to owners of properties which are currently under lease in rural service centers and growth points will not only add impetus to the realization of His Excellency President E.D. Mnangagwa's Vision 2030, but will greatly give value to land and assets which are currently dead capital. It will also empower the people concerned, as giving freehold title will transform their dead assets into capital that can be leveraged for further development. That is the first statement that I'm making. Then I want to take you to a more global burning issue the world over, which is Africans. When you realize the import of what Africans have gone through, should make you shed tears. The ZANU-PF Revolutionary Party is lending its weight to the clarion call, demanding that all those countries which were enriched by enslavement and colonization pay reparations to Africa and to Africans in the diaspora. ZANU-PF bemoans the fact that Africa's development history since the 15th century is one of slavery in three distinct physical forms, namely captive slavery, colonial slavery, and neo-colonial slavery. What Comrade Mahia is representing is his participation in fighting colonial slavery. Untold atrocities committed during the era of the Atlantic African slave trade are part of a long chain of human suffering that ZANU-PF would not want to be forgotten or just wished away. Millions of Africans were killed in the slave raids. Millions died on the long march to the slave ports, and millions perished in the voyage from Africa to the respective destinations. These deeply embedded issues from history refuse to and will not go away from modern consciousness. The brutalities that occurred before the creation of modern African independent states and which accompanied the process of conquest, pacification, and the establishment of effective administrations of colonial occupation were experienced by citizens of African modern states. The subjugation experienced by citizens of African modern states carry and reproduce collective memories of the painful past. As everybody knows, the attainment of independence and total sovereignty of each such state formation and constitution were invariably a forced rather than a negotiated matter. This is a matter that I've spoken about before. Zimbabwe, for instance, was not won through democracy. There were no votes cast to say, do you want independence or not? It was fought for. And that's what Comrade Mahia represents. It was 16 years of protracted armed struggle. In the case of our country, independence and restoration of basic human rights were attained after 16 years protracted armed struggle. In other words, there were massive violations of human and people's rights committed during the era of conquest and of establishment of colonial rule, which turned out not to be a civilizing mission as they always touted, but another form of slavery. In the case of Kenya, we all know Kenya, modern Kenya, brutalities were committed by the British colonial administration against the Kenyan population during the Mau Mau insurrection. No apology or reparations were paid to the Kenyans. To be recalled is the fact that various Christian churches at the time not only condoned or connived in committing this crime against this crime against humanity, but also endorsed and encouraged and even institutionalized it. It cannot be denied that African slave labor made the West rich. On top of that, African resources made and continues to this day and age to make the West rich and great. Through this exploitative economic relationship, the slave raids and slave trade have impacted negatively on orderly development process of Africa. In fact, we can say Africa's orderly development process has been rendered impossible. The African populations did not know peace, still do not know peace, which social media onslaught against Zimbabwe, peddling fake news and a false narrative of a non-existent crisis, with the clear intention and objective to disrupt Zimbabwe's orderly development process. It is in this global context that ZANU-PF is lending its weight behind all those movements worldwide calling for apology and payment of reparations to descendants of victims or to countries on whose soil these violations were committed and whose productive manpower in the case of the Atlantic slave trade was drained out of them. ZANU-PF has taken note and is lending its revolutionary support to recent efforts at dialogue. We are aware the Namibians and Germans are talking about acts of genocide committed on the Herero and Nama people of Namibia, and which arose in the first decade of the 20th century. The DRC Congolese, together with the Burundians, are talking to the Belgians about issues of human barbarity that occurred in King Leopold's so-called Congo Free State and in the colonization of Burundi and Rwanda and their balkanization along ethnic lines. I want you to know that the current problems between Tutsis and Hutus was created by the Belgians, who basically said and studied the anatomy of people in the country and divided and assigned to say, you are a Tutsi, you are a Hutu. People who had lived peacefully together for a long time, they were deliberately divided in order for the Belgians to be able to rule the people. As a consequence of seeking redress, to redress the brutalities that occurred in the colonization of Zimbabwe, and during the colonization there was dispossession, violent dispossession of our land and brutal confiscation of our livestock by the colonialists. The country suffered, that is, in addition to what we went through, the country suffered 20 years of naked bullying, economic isolation, and a severe sanctions regime by the former colonial powers, now acting in concert as economic and political powers in support of what they allege are the rights of 4,500 former white farmers. Former colonial powers and their allies are piling pressure on Zimbabwe through exclusion of Zimbabwe from participating in and benefiting from the current international financial architecture. In the light of the sanctions and regime change policies being pursued by Europe, white Commonwealth countries, Australia and Canada, and the United States, the persistent question that ZANU-PF is raising and asking is, who shall enforce compensation, entitlements, or violations which occurred during the African Atlantic slave trade in the pre-colonial phase? ZANU-PF has observed with dismay recent violations by the global powerful where might is displayed as right. Of even greater concern to ZANU-PF is the refusal by descendants of slave owners and citizens and governments of countries that were enriched through slave trade, and citizens of and governments of countries that perpetrated and benefited from the brutal conquest that accompanied colonial occupation. They refuse, to start with, even several centuries after, to apologize for the massive human rights violations perpetrated during the Atlantic African slave trade and the colonial conquest which enriched their countries. They don't apologize. And these are the same countries which come to us to preach about human rights. They can't even apologize for past wrongs. They also refuse to pay reparations. And where they agreed to enter into negotiations is happened between the Namibians and the Germans for payment of the reparations. They offer too little and also deliberately protract the negotiations in order to weary those who are demanding payment of reparations, those who are demanding that apologies should be given. ZANU-PF is therefore demanding that those countries which are guilty of the brutalities accompanying the Atlantic slave trade and the colonial conquest of the continent should make public apologies in the first instance, and in the second instance should make payment of reparations. ZANU-PF takes strong exception to being lectured on issues of human rights by citizens of countries which perpetrated the brutalities accompanying the African slave trade and colonial conquest of Africa, and who refuse to render apologies or to pay reparations. Finally, ZANU-PF condemns unreservedly the discriminatory and racist manner the issue pertaining to reparations has been handled globally when taking into account the following. I want to show you how racist the West is against black Africa, black Africans. One, at the time of the abolition of the Atlantic African slave trade, the British, through the British Parliament, approved and paid 20 million pounds as compensation to slave owners already rich through the labor of the slaves. Even the abolitionists did not consider any payment of compensation or reparations for the slaves themselves. They paid compensation and reparations to slave owners. Mark that. Even nearer home, when President de Klerk of South Africa, of apartheid South Africa, apologized to the Africans of South Africa for the evils of apartheid, he remained conspicuously silent about reparations to Africans for the wrongdoings of the apartheid system. For this insult to Africans who suffered oppression and injustice over centuries, de Klerk was even awarded a Nobel Peace Prize. 3. The other European powers that legalized slavery, Denmark and the Netherlands, paid reparations also to the slave owners, slave masters, but nothing to the slaves. In modern times, I just want you to know, even where we take it away from Europe and Africa, that there is no fairness to black people. In modern times, reparations have been paid to Jews following the Second World War. Korean women, Japan had to pay reparations for comfort women it forcibly obtained from Korea during Second World War. Japanese Americans have also been paid reparations for wrongs committed against them. Recently, reparations have been imposed on Iraq by the United Nations itself for its wrongful invasion of Kuwait. In Haiti, for Haiti to be independent, it was forced to pay compensation for the emancipation of the slaves who founded Haiti in 1804. They had to pay compensation of 90 million francs to France for them to be allowed to be recognized as free and independent Haiti. And I want to say that that debt to France and slave owners was financed by French banks and the American Citibank and was finally paid off in 1947. The equivalent in 2003 of that amount, which the slaves had to pay to France to earn their freedom and their emancipation, was 21 billion United States dollars. In contrast, I want to draw the contrast so that you compare. In contrast, Africans have received not a cent, no reparations for the atrocities committed against them during their 350 years of captive enslavement. Surely, Africans are being discriminated against on racist grounds. ZANU-PF is fully aware that countries which today parade themselves as paragons of human rights observation, namely England, Denmark, Netherlands, France, Portugal, Canada, Germany, and the United States of America. These countries participated in the Atlantic African slave trade and were enriched as a consequence, but they've to date not dared or bothered to apologize for the crimes against humanity which were committed during that era. I want to highlight here the double standards. They are not even prepared. Let's forget for a moment the refusal to pay reparations. Just to apologize, to say we were enriched by slave labor, but we apologize for those crimes. They refuse to do that. And these are the people who come to lecture you that you should observe human rights. These are the people who conquered you during colonialism and never observed any human rights, only started preaching human rights when they were handing over power in 1980 in the case of Zimbabwe. They have not offered or paid the reparations for the past wrongs. Instead, the mentioned countries, like I've said, paid reparations to the slave masters, to the slave owners, and in the case of France, extorted from the newly founded Haiti, which was a country of slaves who had rebelled against French rule. They extorted 90 million francs as compensation for the emancipation of slaves. That ends my statement. I'll give, before I go to another topic, maybe I deal with it now. As part of our raising awareness of the anti-sanctions resolution that was taken by SADC, all SADC members were enjoined to call for the unconditional removal of sanctions and in a coordinated manner on the 25th of October of every year until the sanctions are removed. As part of our raising that consciousness, we are going to hold an e-gala as Department of Information and Publicity. The venue will be in Bulawayo. We will in due course advise you the theme. We also in due course advise you the messages that we would want to see transmitted. On this issue, I wanted to say that as Zimbabweans, we must be aware what the intent behind the sanctions were. The intent primarily was to reverse the land reform program. That was the intent. And European countries acting in concert with the United States, acting in concert with the white Commonwealth countries, Australia and Canada, put in place statutes which imposed sanctions. Sanctions by their very nature are intended to cripple a country's economy. That was the objective. In the case of Zimbabwe, not just to cripple, but for us to surrender and decide that we are going to reverse and give back land to those who dispossessed it from us brutally. Zimbabwe has stood the test of time. We have refused to succumb to the bidding of the West, of the powerful West, I must add. And when they realized that we have remained steadfast and resolute, sanctions have been continued and continue to this day as a punitive measure, I must mention, as a punitive measure. Firstly, to punish Zimbabweans and separate Zimbabweans from ZANU-PF. That is the goal. To punish, make the economy scream, separate ZANU-PF from its people, and allow puppets and their surrogates to take over power in this country. Regime change agenda. Secondly, they also use the punitive sanctions against Zimbabwe to deter countries which are in the same situation as Zimbabwe, i.e. Namibia and South Africa. Basically, they are sending a warning to those countries to say, if you do what Zimbabwe did, we will deal with you collectively, as Europe, as United States, as white Commonwealth countries. As you are aware, I tell this story. You know, Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison fighting for the freedom and respect for human rights of the South African people. 27 years. He came out, he went in very young, energetic. He came out an old man. 27 years of his life wasted. On top of the imprisonment, the United States slapped sanctions against him. Now listen, these sanctions were only removed after many years after Nelson Mandela had died. Check that for yourself. Even after they were glorifying him, the sanctions were still in place. As a statement to say, never you fight for your freedom. Even when you are dead, you will still be under sanctions.